Okay, welcome to the new Knowledge Exchange webinar series. My name is Michael Guerin, and I am today's moderator. I'm very excited to introduce today's guest speaker, David Margolin. Dave has 20 plus years under his belt in the private sector, starting initially in the commercial side with brief stints at the Weather Channel and AccuWeather, followed by a much longer tenure in the commodities and financial sectors with companies such as Citadel and ICE. In today's webinar, our focus will be on the early part of Dave's career, which I think you'll find both surprising and interesting. At least I know I did. As Dave navigated through many new opportunities, challenges, and disappointments. So Dave, without further ado, why don't you go ahead and get us started?
All right, well, thanks for having me here today, Michael. And, let me just first start by saying that I think overall, I feel very fortunate to have had been able to have a lot of the jobs that probably I hoped or even maybe dreamed of having back in my earlier days in college and such. I feel very fortunate working at companies ranging from startup companies to big hedge funds to, well, you mentioned the Weather Channel, like my dream job when I was a kid. So, I have to say, overall, I feel very fortunate about my career path, all things considered. But I also, as part of this, webinar, I definitely want to focus on the fact that even despite that, there definitely been and continue to be challenges, and I want to share some of those, right? And to be frank, it's hard for me. I'm not the most open person with some of these things, but I feel like by sharing some of my experiences, perhaps I can help someone who's gonna who's earlier in their career and just kind of getting going. So with that, I think you mentioned one of my first really job out of grad school was with the Weather Channel, and that was a dream job for me. But it was a temporary position, and that was definitely the first. When I think of some of the more significant obstacles I ran through, that definitely comes to mind as near the top of the list, especially early in my career, in the sense that again, it was a temporary position, and I worked very hard to make it a permanent position, and I enjoyed it there so much. Still have fond memories: the people, the city, the job, the experience. I mean, I can go on. But long story short, I didn't make the cut, and that was definitely my first big blow in terms of my professional career. And I guess what I'll say in terms of I don't know, trying to pass on sort of a positive message or takeaway from that experience was that there's going to be ups and downs in your career. Almost everyone I know, at least in my sphere, in my network, even the most successful folks, have had some of those, ups and downs, so to speak. And that was one for me. But when I look back at it, my next job, although it wasn't, maybe as maybe it wasn't sort of my dream position, and I turned out I wasn't there long. It still gave me some good experience, and it still helped sort of pad my resume, however you want to look at it. And it helped to be able to launch me to my next position, which was something much more that I was looking forward to, advancement in terms of some of the things I'd be doing and pay and things like that. So that's definitely one sort of experience that comes to mind. If you'd like, I can share a couple more experiences sort of in a similar light. Would that be helpful?
Yeah, I think it would be.
Okay. So I guess sort of two other experiences that I had to go through, and I would call these like early mid-career, but these are the ones that really stick with me, making me feel old. Soon I'll be talking about late career, but two other experiences that come to mind. And again, you could probably, someone who's had as much experience as me, you could probably spend hours on this kind of stuff. But one was one difficult path I had to navigate was sort of in my first management position. It turned out I had to manage a friend, and that was difficult. And So for anyone who has to go through that on both sides, I'm sure, and especially because we actually have we had to deal with some issues during that period too, and that made it even more difficult. And what I'll say about that, again, long story short, in terms of a takeaway or sharing my experience and something that might be helpful is, hey, don't put yourself in that position. No, but if you have to be in that position, um, what I learned was, this is where I think I really started to appreciate mentors. And having, don't forget, it's easy to overlook the importance of whether it's official or unofficial, but just being able to talk to people, have people as advisors, um, you know, in your network that you can reach out to, that you feel comfortable reaching out to, that you could ask for advice. Folks who have maybe gone through the similar experiences, or even if they haven't, that they may be able to share valuable knowledge. I really feel like I had some of that then, which was helpful. But I look back now and I realize it would have been better to have even a bigger network at that point, because I think if I did, it would have made that situation much easier. I have a tendency, I think one of my faults is sometimes trying to think I could take, um, uh, I can do things myself, right? That I don't need help. And especially early in my career, I think I felt more that way. And again, I learned later in my career, partly through that experience, that you need to ask for help sometimes. It's going to make your job better, your job easier, but also it's just going to make you a better employee or manager or whatever you're doing. So that was another certainly experience that comes to mind. And then maybe just the last one I'll share is and again, it's related to this in terms of the takeaway. I had an experience where basically for a job, I had to make a very difficult decision. This is a little bit more early mid career, where basically in order to advance, I would have to move, and by then I had a family, and that is also a very difficult decision. And I think in hindsight, um, I probably made the wrong decision. We ended up moving, and it was very difficult for my family and stuff, and we had to move again, and really really messy and hard and difficult. Not so much for me, but probably more so for the rest of my family. And again, what I didn't do as well, and if I could go back in time and you know give myself or go back in the past and give myself some advice, again, I think the thing that I would do is get more advice from independent folks. Not folks within necessarily even my, certainly not within my company or wherever I was working at the time, or even family. Although you should get advice from your family and those people, but really just trying to find those independent sources. Again, folks who have and ideally folks who have gone through some of those same experiences. But even if they're not, just folks who are independent who can really give you objective views. And I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dave. I know it's difficult to not just for you but for anybody to talk about the past, especially things we don't we don't look back fondly on. But yeah, I mean that's I think you're absolutely right. I think it's important to always try to get help from as many people as possible, even if you don't think you need it. That's knowledge exchange. The thing we're doing right now is huge, big. That's one of the big reasons we have all those people on there, looking to help anyone who needs it. And I think that's. I think it's really important that people, not just people like me, early career, but even people more like you who are later on in their career, mid career or so. Um, it's always good to have people in your corner, so to speak. So to keep things rolling here, I'm just gonna ask another question. So what were some What were some high moments for you? We talk a lot about on the knowledge exchange webinars about the more down moments, but there's good moments too in there. The ups and downs. So what were some of the big ups for you?
Yeah, sure. And I don't want to sound like a Debbie Downer because again, I feel very fortunate about my career for sure. Yeah, I think, a lot of high moments, really. I mean, and just some of the positions I mentioned earlier on in terms of working at different hedge funds and for startup companies and things like that. And I know that's more general. Um, but I would say, in terms of some specific accomplishments, well, I mean, I would even say one is sort of outside of work, or my direct job, which is, you alluded to this, is some of the sort of educational programs I've been able to get into. And I feel very fortunate, like with the knowledge exchange and the forecast contest and just the various AMS groups and committees that I've worked with over the years. And just in general, more even higher level than that, just that the opportunities I've had to work with students, a lot of different students, a lot of great students, and a lot of early career people, like yourself, over the last 15 years. I'm very thankful that I got put into this position, and I think some of it's just being in the right place at the right time. I'll just share, like, kind of, I feel like how this kind of started. It was back many years ago. We were looking for the company I was working at. We were looking at sort of maybe looking at how to extend our research, our reach into the different research groups. And so, we said, well, it would be great to work with the folks at university. And at the time, and even now, it wasn't so clear as to how you make that happen. Like just pick up the phone. And again, sort of long story short, I was going to an AMS conference, and I remember reaching out to a professor, one of my favorite professors of mine, good friend, and also someone who volunteers a lot for programs like this. And I ended up meeting him at the AMS conference, and we just hit it off, both in terms of the research, his research, and sort of in terms of having a friendly rapport. And from that point on, I started to develop more of a relationship with university, and from him, I developed a relationship with some of the students, and so on and so forth. And it just built that I realized that this is something. I guess it felt like, there's a lot of reasons for it, and some of it were very selfish in terms of, hey, I realized it helped the business, the company, and things like that. But I also realized it was sort of a way for me to kind of give back a little bit, like to stay in touch with students in your early career. It was fun for me. It was easy for me, and I felt like maybe I was helping with some of those things. So anyway, that whole experience and that things I still do today was definitely something I think I look back at and say I'm really glad I'm involved in that. I guess more in terms of the professional career. I mean, I'll just again. There's a lot that come to mind. Again, I feel very fortunate, but one of the more interesting was, again, I was with a more of a small company at the time, startup company, and things had really kind of fallen apart at the time. And we had a very small team, and very small resources. And I like to say, with just like duct tape and paper clips, basically, we we were able to keep things afloat, and even had some pretty nice successes in terms of our clients and such. And we gave the company a chance to live another day, so to speak, and find new opportunities. And so when I look back, there was a lot of stress, there was a lot of pressure, but boy, I feel proud of what we did, and I also feel very proud to have worked with that team during that period, because I know what they were going through. They were going through the same thing I did, and it was made me feel good that we were able to accomplish that.
Yeah, that's both of those things great. I can especially speak to your work with students. I know that's I believe we met at Rutgers got to be a couple of years ago now. Seems like it was only seems it was much shorter than that, but at any rate,
Yeah,
you know,
your beard was much smaller then. I remember.
yeah, um, it goes up and down in size on occasion. um, but yeah, it's always important to remember that just get big takeaway that you're gonna have ups and downs in your careers, and it's more important to learn from the downs, but to remember the ups, if that makes sense, so that you don't lay awake at night thinking, oh, I could have done this better, I could have done that better. No, you need to learn from those mistakes so that you can have those ups like you did with, whether it be the students or with that startup company or one of the other, I'm sure, many ups you've had over the course of your career. Another question, just to kind of keep the ball rolling. So, what were some important things you did early on in your career that you would say had the biggest impact on your success later on?
Yeah. Um, yeah, a couple things come to mind with that. One is one thing I did well, and then one thing, it's not quite your question, but one thing I learned later to do better. But I think the thing that helped me um, through my career was being persistent, and I guess having a pretty, I feel like a pretty good work ethic that, frankly, I know it's cliche, but I frankly I learned from my mom and dad. They were the two best role models, and I didn't. I especially developed that later on in college, but then it kept with me. And then, I remember working at my first jobs, like, and such, and a lot of times I'd go to the coffee shops and stuff like that back in his early days of the internet and such, and just and spend time research, like writing notes, keeping notes, forecast notes at the time, reading journals and things like that. And I enjoyed it. And, it was part of why I was able to do it. But I know the persistence helped me. And especially even when I lost that first job that I mentioned, um, I felt good in that I had given it my all. That was certainly not a case where I felt like, oh, geez, I left something on the table. I did feel good about that. And I felt like I had learned a lot. And that helped me too. The fact that I was able to take that. And even in my next job, I was able to bring that same sort of mindset and persistence, continue to work hard, continue to try to learn, even if it wasn't my favorite job, to take something from it that I could build on. And so I would definitely, I definitely, when I think that helped me then. And when I talk like as a mentor now to mentees, I always tell them, I said, be persistent, and, whether in most cases it's going to be helpful, whether, you're going for a job, for example. I think you and I were talking about this earlier time about, like, listen, if you're going for a job, if you applied for a job, and you're worried about, following up, I said error on being a nudge, error on being too persistent, error on emailing that potential employer, calling that potential employer, emailing him, sending a resume again. Because in my experience on both ends of things, hiring manager too, like, I want to hear that person who's banging down my door. That's the kind of person I want to hire. So be persistent. Even the advice I've given folks is, when you're, if you're struggling to find an internship or something like that, you know, be a nudge and send someone your work. Send someone at a company you want to work at, Goldman Sachs, whatever it is. Try to find someone and say, "Here's my work," or "Here, I'll work for free." I mean, not everyone can do that, but try, and impress them, and really do that. Um, the other thing I just want to mention real quick too that I didn't do as well, and it's a lesson I learned. One thing I realized early mid career from watching, so the best forecaster I ever knew. I won't say his name, but he knows who he is. Best forecaster I ever worked with. I look back now and I realize that the skill that separated him from, and I've worked with a lot of great forecasters, but the skill that separated him from the rest was his ability to adapt. And especially early in my career, I was very stubborn. I was very stubborn in terms of whether I was working on a problem, and, hey, I'm just going to work, and I'm going to try to crack the nut the same way. And I was stubborn in other ways too. And I look at what he was able to do, and I realize now that that's the key. Being able, like in the sense of a forecast, being able to, maybe you put out a forecast today and it's a 11 to 15 day forecast, and it's extremely warm, but try to look at things objectively the next day, right? Because if you don't, I think you're going to suffer for that. And if you are able to adapt and rethink it and just be open to, hey, I may have to change my forecast, I think you're likely to have much more success. And again, I don't think that just applies to forecasting. I think that applies to most things in life.
Yeah, I think a lot of great points, Dave. And it's funny you mentioned two cliches on your first story. The cliche of the parents and the cliche of persistence. They're both cliches, but it doesn't make them any less true. That our parents, and I can say mine as well. They help us a lot over the years. They raised us. That's essentially how it is. But it sounds cliche, but it is true. And of course, persistence, in most things, and I think in job hunting, especially in work, I think persistence is important as well. You can't just hit a roadblock and say, oh, I'm going to give up. That's not how you're going to advance in your career or in life in general. So I think it's important for especially early careers. Such as myself, to remember that. I apologize if you hear any rumbling. There seems to be a thunderstorm in the background. But it's important that they don't, people like me or whoever might be watching this doesn't get discouraged in what they're doing. You might fail 100 times before you get it right. The light bulb wasn't invented in a day. um, and the adaptability point. Yeah, I agree 100% with that. Speaking from the forecast contest experience myself, I can say that while I haven't changed my forecast too often in the past year or so, I have changed it a lot since I first began. It wasn't working, but I do recall being a little stubborn to change it even in those days. So there's nothing wrong if something's not working. There's nothing wrong with changing it. You might have a good formula going for you for a while, but you can't stick with one thing. There's no perfect solution when it comes to not just the weather. Most things don't have a perfect solution.
Right.
So you can apply that to pretty much anything in life. So we're almost out of time. Is there anything else you wanted to add in here at the end, Dave?
Um, no, I think I think that about covers everything that comes to mind. Again, I would just emphasize those points, that at least have helped me in terms of, the network and finding a mentor and finding multiple mentors. Again, and maybe actually there was just one other thing that comes to mind too. Again, finding those mentors, not it's you, yes, you want some that, you're totally comfortable with and trust and etc. But you also want some that, or at least one that you're not completely comfortable with, right? That's important too. You want to reach out to people who might not have the same views as you and things like that. It helps keep you out of your box. I definitely recommend that. And the last thing I'll say about that is something, again, from my own experience. You are going to come across, it's a small world, especially in the atmospheric sciences. And you're going to come across people that, maybe you work with or whatever, and it doesn't go quite as planned. But I would say try to find something later on that you guys can align behind. And if you can, then work with them on that, right? It could be something completely different from your job or something like that. And I think it helps in terms of not allowing you to kind of resent or feel bad. You try to build something positive from it. And again, I've had a couple of these experiences, and nothing's perfect. And it's not like I don't have days where I look back and have regrets, and you don't want to, get mad at people. But I think that's helped me overall.
All right. And unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Dave, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing all those great stories. I hope our viewers find your talk as interesting and inspiring as I did. And I really hope we can have you back soon to talk about other periods of your career.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you, Michael.
Okay, and for the folks who would like to talk further with Dave or perhaps solicit career advice, you can book a meeting with Dave via theknowledgeexchange.com. And while you're there on the Knowledge Exchange, you can check out all the other great people we've got on there. Lots of great names, a lot of volunteer givers and mentors who are available and be happy to meet and share their knowledge with you. And finally, we'll be posting all of our videos on our YouTube channel, the link to which is in your MailChimps. And since this is a webcast, you can also so you wouldn't be able to ask questions here. You can ask questions to either Dave or myself if you have any questions for me. You can ask us questions on the YouTube channel directly by leaving a comment. And finally, if you have any questions for today's moderator or speaker, you can find us at info@knowledgeexchange.com. Thanks, everyone, and have a great day.
All right. Thank you, Michael.